Alright guys, it's concrete pour day. Now I arrived a little bit late and I had some issues to sort out, so I didn't start recording right away. But as you can see here, we got the concrete truck right here. And this is probably, I don't know how many they had, a whole bunch, but we're 3/4 of the way done here. And you can see, so this guy's dumping his load into the pump truck. And that pump truck takes the concrete and pumps it up through that boom and distributes the concrete where it needs to be on the foundation. So that pump truck didn't move. He set up right there and he was able to cover all the corners of the foundation. Now we used that because the ground was a little bit soft and hard to get back to the corners. So we didn't want to try and get concrete trucks back in there and have them get stuck and have problems. So you can see there's a flexible hose at the end of that boom, and there's a guy who's distributing the concrete where it needs to be, and then the rest of the guys are spreading it out a little bit more and working on getting it level. So this is kind of just like the rough finish. Then they'll spend the rest of the day with the power trowels that they ride on and all their other techniques to get it all finished properly.
Well, that's freaking awesome. Pouring the concrete. It started early today. They got the big pump truck out. It sure is making it easier for them. It's costing me some money, but that's what they said they needed. So that's a nice machine right there. Can't believe how tall that is. The last load sheet I saw for concrete said 73 yards total, and I think I brought in another truck and probably still one more to go, so we might be getting close to 90 yards by the time we're all done. Alright, it's been a busy morning. All the concrete is now poured and we're just finishing it off. Well, the guys are finishing it off. I'm just watching and make sure they do it right. So, there goes the last truck. Now we're just finishing it all. So this wall was kind of bowed out a bit. And they are aligning it back straight. Alright guys, here I am on my new shop floor. Check this out. It's pretty big, so the saw cuts are 10-foot squares. So that should be useful, when you're working on something, just to lay something out and know like, okay, there's 10 feet. So that's what's happening there. So today was the big pour and it was very stressful because concrete, you pretty much don't have a lot of time to work with it, and you have to make decisions quick. And if you haven't made all the decisions ahead of time, like, it's very stressful, like, okay, let me go sort out this. So the biggest problem I had was with the company I had do this was a lack of communication. So they never told me for sure that they would be out first thing Monday morning to do this. They didn't call me. So I kind of wanted to, ahead of the pour, like, talk to the manager and just talk things out and make sure we were all set. Because the big problem I had is after the guys had left, I double checked all their work for the anchor bolts, right? And I had the one that they needed to move, and I hadn't moved it yet, and I was just assuming I would be notified when they were going to come and pour so that I could tell them, like, hey, let's just change this anchor point. Well, no one knew about it. I showed up this morning and they were 20% of the way done, so they had this whole bay just about done. And this anchor bolt is the one that needed to be moved. So, I mean, luckily I got here in time. The concrete was still wet and we could move it over. I'm just not too happy about how straight those are. So that's one thing I would have done over, is to try and get the anchor bolts straighter by having a second template that would have went on top of what I had before. So it would just be a second point to locate the bolts straight. So hopefully it's not that big of a deal whenever I go to put the building together. We'll see if I'm, if I really need to worry about it. I had them put down this little detail here for the garage doors. So it's just a 3/8 inch, I guess, drop off here, and then it kind of tapers out just so when water hits the garage door, it flows outside the building instead of sitting here and pooling and wanting to trickle in. So that's what we decided. I picked 10 inches. I didn't know actually what it had to be. I mean, I know my girts are 8 inches and the door is 2 inches. So I added that up, it's 10. If I have to grind it, the last inch back, if it needs to be set back more, then that's what I have to do. But so I guess the best thing, the weather held out and it didn't rain from the time we, boxed it up. Well, not boxed it up, but from the time that they came back out and started digging the footer and all that stuff, it never rained. So that worked out. So what I'm going to do is wet cure this instead of using a cure and seal type application. I decided I'm just going to wet cure it, just keep it wet, and it's supposed to rain the next few days, so that will help. The building, so this is Monday, the building arrives Wednesday. Like, that couldn't have worked out any better, right? I was afraid that, like, somehow the pour would get delayed and then the building would show up, and then I'd have like a pump truck out here and 4 cement trucks and then some guy with a tractor trailer pulling in and not having a place to do that. So I'm glad I don't have to worry about that. So this is my floor drain, and I really didn't know how they were going to slope the floor into this. So this is the top of the floor drain, and it's made to be, this is a core plug. So I'll chip away the concrete just a little bit more around the edge of it, and then you just put a wrench or something in here to twist that open, and you're good to go. So the thing I didn't really know is how they were going to slope the floor to this drain, and basically we just decided on using a 3-foot 2x4 and sloping the floor to it, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. I guess the big problem was, and they didn't really notice it until I said something, was this whole form was like bowed out a lot. So you can still see how this foam isn't straight to the edge. I don't know that that will be like that big of a problem, but I don't know if you can tell how this board is like kicked out a little bit. But they put in all these extra reinforcements here so that it would straighten it out. I just didn't like how I had to be the one who noticed that, because I don't do concrete ever. This is my first concrete. They work on it full time. You would think that they would know the things to look out for. So that was disappointing. So yeah, I mean, just the couple problems I had with the company I chose. I mean, they seem to do an okay job, and we'll see whenever I go to put the building together. But yeah, it was the lack of communication with them has been frustrating. So it would have been nice to like get a call every day from like the manager to say, hey, I'm sending the guys out, they're going to be here, they're going to do this is how long it's going to take. So that would have been good info to have. All right, guys, so I was editing the concrete pour video, and I realized I didn't have a good outro from it. It was a real hectic day, and I was really, just concerned about them doing everything right, that I didn't have time to, you know, really concentrate on filming the process of them, you know, power troweling the floor, you know, with them little machines that they ride on that have the fan blades, and also just finishing all the details around the sides as far as, you know, getting everything leveled and finished correctly. But I will share the 4 things I have that I think are the important takeaways that, you know, were kind of a struggle for me, but probably if you know about this, it can help you out. So I'll say number 1 is just schedule ahead of time that you're going to have a powwow with the manager after everything's boxed up and ready to pour, that you're just going to walk through everything and make sure, you know, all your anchor bolts are in the right place, and just have a plan on how everything's going to happen on actual pour day. So with my situation, we had 2 different crews. One crew boxed everything up and prepped the site, you know, did all the final grading and put on the vapor barrier and did all the rebar. And a different group was present on pour day. None of the same people were there, so it was like the group that showed up on pour day had no idea about anything that was going on. They just showed up and like, oh, we're just gonna start pouring this floor, which is fine for the most part. You know, the professionals, they do it all the time. I'm sure it doesn't vary that much from day to day, but for me, I would have liked to have a better idea of what was going to happen. So that's step number 1, was have the powwow with the manager and get everything straight. Step number 2 is beforehand have all your details sorted out. So like my garage doors, I didn't really think about that until the day of the pour. I mean, I thought about it before, but I just forgot to make a final decision on that. So I would say you need to know how deep it's going to be. It would probably be beneficial ahead of time to mark out on your form boards the start and end of each opening, and then know like how deep you want it to be, if you want to have like a broom brush finish on it, or, you know, all those little details. If you do the research ahead of time, you're not going to have to make a last minute shoot from the hip decision. And that also goes for like the floor drain. If you have any floor drains, know if you want it tapered into the floor drain, know how many feet you want that to be, and that will also determine like kind of the height that you set it in the floor also. So if you wanted to have like 1/8 of an inch fall per foot, and then you want it to be 4 feet, do the math, set your level of the drain correctly, and make sure that the crew that's there knows to like use a 4-foot 2x4 to transition into that drain height. So that would be number 2. Number 3, I would say, is know your after treatment. So your cure and seal, or if you're just going to wet cure it like I did, just know which product you want. That way you're not left with the last minute decision on that. I was able to use just wet curing because I didn't want to have to scrub that gel coat from the cure and seal off. So basically that just keeps all the moisture in the concrete so it doesn't dry out too quick and, you know, crack. Well, when I did the pour, it was springtime and kind of rainy anyway, so I wasn't too worried about that that problem happening, and I was able to keep it wet with the hose, and that just saves me from, you know, scrubbing that off later. Now I have decided to use the Yuko Cure or Diamond Hard product. So it's just, to me, it was the best bang for the buck. And I'll probably have a separate episode on that, but it was a good bang for the buck for basically under $400. I'll have something down on my garage floors, and that's better than the, you know, more than $4,000, I'm sure, if I would have went with any type of epoxy or, you know, something like that. So yeah, that was number 3. Know how you're gonna treat it afterwards. And then so number 4 is the anchor bolts. I kind of mentioned that the anchor bolts kind of got crooked, and it wasn't that big of a deal. We were able to take a jack handle on most of them, and, you know, if it wasn't straight up and down, we could pry it and get it into the right location. So that wasn't that big of a deal. But I do feel like some of them kind of just got cocked out of where they should have been. So I think if you would have had 2 pieces of plywood that were several inches apart, you know, kind of at both ends of the bolts to hold them in the right location would have made it a lot better as far as trying to set the posts down on them. So anyway, I'm doing this after the building is up. So you saw how bad the bolts were. Just know that you're still able to get the building up, but it just would be easier if you spent a little bit more time on the templates. So those were the 4 main things that I have as far as advice that will help you out, and just things to consider. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully you're liking these videos. The next one's cool because it's going to be the erection video. Stay tuned for that. I'll click the link.